The application wizard really is the backbone of IronSpeed Designer, and as I mentioned, if you're already evaluating IronSpeed Designer, you've probably used the application wizard to create your first application. One of the most interesting steps really is the page style. IronSpeed Designer ships with over 26 different styles of pages, many different ones to choose from. If you don't like the particular skin or style, you can actually customize those styles very simply through a style sheet mechanism. I'll show you that a little bit later. Next is selecting the database server that houses the database or set of tables that you're going to be building your application from. We support 4 different database types: Microsoft Access, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, and Oracle. Next are pages. We support over 27 different page types that IronSpeed Designer will generate right out of the box. Nearly all of these are master detail pages, as I mentioned earlier, if you happen to have the appropriate primary and foreign key relationships declared. On the left side of the screen, you can browse through the different page types to look at a pro forma of what you're going to get. And then on the right, select the database tables and views that you're going to build those pages for. Next is the keys step. You use the keys step to declare virtual primary and virtual foreign keys. These are recommendations that come from IronSpeed Designer. Not something to be taken as gospel, but just recommendations of fields we think are good candidates to be virtual primary and virtual foreign keys. Coming up is the languages step. IronSpeed Designer automatically generates multilingual applications. And in the upper right toolbar of your generated application, in the upper right corner, you'll see a little globe. And that globe, if you click on it, displays a select language page. That's a page your application end users can use to select amongst the languages that you've generated your application in. This happens automatically just by selecting the languages you want here in the languages step. Finally, we have the application setting. Here's where you declare your application name, pick the code language you'd like generated, what .NET framework you want to generate for, whether you want SQL queries inline or as stored procedures. Before you generate your application, you may want to click the Options button. We have over 200 different options to select from that help guide or control the application generation process. This really helps fine-tune the application you're going to get by setting all sorts of things you want. What do you want in your header, your footer? How do you want your tables configured? Do you want multi-panel, multi-column layout, and so forth? Many, many different options, and I would encourage you to spend some time just kind of browsing through that to see what you have control over. There are 3 sections in that dialog. The first is the new application generation options section. Those are options that apply only when you're creating your application the first time. If you change them after creating your application, they won't apply to the current application. They'll apply to any future applications. The next are new page options that apply to new pages you're creating. As you may have discovered, you can come back to the application wizard time and time again, anytime you want, and add or replace pages just by selecting those pages again. Typically, you might do this if you want to create variants of a page for different communities that are going to be using your application. And that's where you would use new page options to change how you want these different variants to be created. Finally, are general application options that apply anytime you want. You can go into the application generation options dialog, accessible from the tools menu, and change these options, and they apply immediately throughout your application. Now, let's get down to brass tacks and actually show IronSpeed Designer at work. Here's the IronSpeed Designer Start tab. This is where you always start your new application from by clicking the Create a New Application. That displays the application wizard. And now I'm just going to briefly move through and pick McKinley, which is my current favorite design theme. Next, I'm going to select the Southwind database that is included with IronSpeed Designer. That way you can repeat anything you see here today yourself just by using the exact same database. Here on the Pages step are over 27 different page types. You can see them all just by clicking and scrolling to see a pro forma. We've got sophisticated table-in-table pages. We have record-in-table pages. You can see tabbed panels over here. All of these are created automatically with IronSpeed Designer without you doing anything more than engaging the application wizard like we're doing here. Over on the right-hand side, I'm going to select all the tables in this database. There are only a few. And I'll select a couple of database views like the current product list and the sales by category. Next up is the key step. And as I mentioned earlier, here are some suggestions for virtual primary keys. You'll typically encounter these suggestions on database views that you selected, much less often on database tables because you usually have explicitly declared primary and foreign keys with database tables, but not with database views. The product ID and category ID happen to be primary keys in this case, so those are good suggestions, as are the product ID field pointing to products.product ID and category ID pointing to categories.category ID. So I'll accept those, move to the languages step where I'm just going to accept English, and I'll just accept the defaults here again, and click Go. It's going to generate 99 different web pages for me here, plus some additional pages like the select language page and so forth. While it's doing that, let me talk a little bit about application performance. Common question, how do I make my application run faster? The best thing you can do is really to index your key fields and any column headings that are clickable in your application. Ultimately, your underlying application performance is governed much more by how well indexed your database is than anything you can do in IronSpeed Designer. So if a key field displays a child table, for example, due to that relationship, it's a really good idea to have the foreign key fields declared as indices and indexed in your database. Similarly, when you're looking at a table panel, any column heading you might click on is going to cause a sort to happen. And if those fields are not indexed and you have a large table, that could pull a full table sort rather than using an underlying index. So I would definitely advise you to index as many of your fields as you think might be used. Okay, and here's our application. As you can see, we have a masthead at the top. We've got a multi-level menu over here. And we've got, in this case, a show table page. This is looking at categories. If we go, for example, to customers, we might look at a more interesting page by selecting Show Customers. And that will display a customers table. I can click any column to sort. I can drill in by clicking the Show Record button here. And here's where I see a master detail page. Again, this was all built using the explicitly declared primary and foreign key relationships. That's how I could get this show record page to begin with, and that's how I have both a parent and a child, or a master and a detail panel, expressing a one-to-many relationship.